Your engine isn't overheating just because it's old. It's overheating because you don't actually know what that radiator under your hood is doing. Most people think it's just a cooler full of water, but it's really a sealed pressure system with chemistry, airflow, and moving parts working together. One weak link and the whole chain breaks. Stick with me to the end, I'll show you a simple checklist you can use in your garage right after watching. First though, you need to understand why that radiator even exists and what happens when it can't keep up with the heat. Why your engine needs a radiator in the first place. Engines can only keep running because the radiator has their back. Without it, the heat from every fireball inside the cylinders would tear the motor apart in minutes. Think about what's really happening each time you turn the key. Burning fuel doesn't just power the pistons. Only about a third of that energy actually moves your car down the road. The rest turns into raw heat that has to go somewhere fast. If it stays locked inside the block, metals expand until clearances vanish. Pistons seize, cylinder walls distort, and oil cooks into sludge that stops protecting bearings. Long before a check light comes on, the damage is already underway. This is why people sometimes reach for plain water when things get hot. It feels like a quick fix, but it's the wrong move. Water boils at a temperature too low for daily engine operation. Once it flashes to steam, it carries almost no heat, leaving metal to absorb the burn. Worse than that, when outside temps drop, plain water freezes solid around -5 Celsius. Ice expands. And inside an engine block, that means cracks, ruptured passages, and broken parts. Then add corrosion water alone, chews up surfaces, pits the pump, and clogs those small coolant paths with rust and scale. That shortcut turns into thousands in repairs. Instead, the system runs on coolant, a mix of water and antifreeze formulated for the job. Those additives stretch the boiling point well past what the motor needs, keep it liquid far below freezing, and carry corrosion inhibitors that protect the insides from turning brown and sludgy. When it flows, it travels through jackets wrapped around the cylinders, absorbing heat like blood, pulling warmth from organs. Here's the kicker, it doesn't move by magic. The water pump, driven by the engine, is what pushes the coolant through its loop the moment you start the car. Without that steady push, the hot fluid would just sit and boil. Then comes the thermostat, a valve that stays shut until the motor reaches its sweet spot, usually around 195 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit. Only then does it open and let coolant pass into the radiator. Until that point, it makes sure your engine warms up quick, since running cold is almost as damaging as running too hot. Those two parts, pump and thermostat, set the pace for how heat leaves the block and how steady the temp stays. Picture the radiator as a set of mechanical lungs at the front of the car. The hot coolant enters, gets spread thin through narrow tubes, and waits for a blast of airflow to strip off the heat. Whether it's pulled by a fan while idling or forced through at highway speed, that moving air is what keeps the temperature in check every second the engine runs. Leave out the chemistry, and the results are ugly. A buddy might keep topping off with tap water, thinking all is fine. Months later, the pump seals start leaking. Next, the inside of the core turns brown with rust and scale. Heat transfer drops, temps spike, and soon a head gasket blows. One cheap choice at the start snowballs into a total teardown. Here's what holds the whole setup together. The radiator cap. By sealing the loop under pressure, it raises the boiling point and stops the coolant from turning to vapor. When pressure gets too high, the valve at the cap lets extra fluid slip into the reservoir, saving the system from bursting. Without that cap, the rest can't keep up. So the radiator isn't just a box bolted to the front, it's the pressure-managed, heat-trading heart of the cooling system that buys every motor a fighting chance. How well it does that job? That comes down to what's inside the core, the tubes, the fins, and the materials they're made of. Inside the radiator, fins, tubes, and why materials matter. From the street, you just see a flat grill. But what sits behind it is a packed heat exchanger built with purpose. The core uses rows of thin tubes laced with metal fins, all laid out to strip heat from the coolant as fast as possible. The hot liquid pumped out of the block doesn't just slide through. Inside those tubes sits a small feature called a turbulator. It agitates the flow, mixing it up so the whole column of coolant takes on heat evenly instead of only the layer rubbing the metal walls. That simple insert makes the entire core far more efficient at dropping temperature. Not every core is laid out the same. The fin density, tube size, and the choice of metal change how much heat it can carry away. Go back to the first half of the 20th century and most radiators were built from copper and brass. That combo pulled heat better than anything at the time. By the 1,970 seconds, automakers started swapping to aluminum. The reason wasn't magic chemistry, it was weight. Aluminum shaved pounds off the nose of the car while being cheaper to mass produce. The trade-off is thermal efficiency. Copper brass still handles more heat per square inch, but aluminum balances good enough, cooling with less weight and lower cost. Think about the fins like a big heat sink you'd see on electronics. Each wafer of metal adds more surface where air can glide across and pull heat away. Tight fin spacing increases that surface area, but it also means dirt and bugs clog it faster. When the fins are blocked, air can't get through and the radiator loses its ability to shed heat. Even a thin mat of dust will push temperatures higher. The fix is cheap, blow out the fins with low pressure air or water, taking care not to bend them. That's shop level maintenance anyone can handle. Air is the real workhorse here. At highway speed, the airflow from outside does the heavy lifting. At idle or in slow traffic, road speed isn't enough. Electric fans step in as the backup plan, pulling a steady blast through the fins when the car isn't moving. Here's the kicker, those fans don't guess when to kick on. A coolant temperature sensor, usually mounted in the radiator or engine, feeds data to the control module. When the reading hits a set threshold, the computer powers up the fan and keeps the coolant from boiling over in traffic. Without that sensor and control, the fans would just sit silent while temps climbed. Now back to the material debate. If you're restoring an old muscle car, copper brass still draws attention because it's period correct and unmatched in raw heat transfer. For daily use, aluminum wins through weight savings and manufacturing efficiency, which is why nearly all late model vehicles use it. Both options work, but knowing the history explains the split. Brass and copper ruled until efficiency standards forced engineers to chase lighter parts. Today, copper brass still sets the benchmark for serious cooling, while aluminum dominates the mass market. In the end, no matter which metal is up front, the same weak points exist. Bent fins cut airflow. Clogged passages stop circulation. Weak fans leave you stranded in traffic. And a cap that won't hold pressure takes away the system's ability to raise the boiling point. Any one of those sinks, the radiator's job before the whole core looks bad. Keeping your eyes on those trouble spots is what keeps the big problems from ever showing up. That leaves the bigger truth about radiators. They're not just metal boxes full of liquid. They work as finely tuned systems designed to control pressure, chemistry, and airflow every mile the engine runs. Skip radiator care and you're staring at warped heads, blown gaskets, and repair bills that crush wallets. Cooling problems don't just sideline a car, they can wipe out the engine entirely. What you need to do is simple. Check coolant level. Look over hoses for cracks or bulges. Clean the fins so air can pass through. Make sure the fan kicks on when the temp rises. And flush the coolant every few years so it keeps its protection. That short list stops small issues before they turn into major failures. Subscribe for practical how-tos and tool-first tutorials you can use this weekend. One bad cap or clogged passage can destroy an engine or protect it for years.